Welcome to KSOK Uncensored. Tonight's guest is Monica Yates, host of the Feminine as Fuck podcast, trauma healer, and feminine and masculine embodiment coach. Monica, we are living in times where men are being told their masculinity is toxic. Women are being told to be more like men. It makes me feel like the objective is to have a genderless society. Given your background, what does this all mean?
I know it's a really complex kind of situation that we're in these days. I mean, for me, it comes down to, and what I've noticed with doing this work for so many years with so many different women, is it comes down to a lot of us have kind of grown up in an environment at home where the pendulum was kind of swung too far to the other extreme, where women got their rights back, which was really important. But there was
Right.
no, okay, things are equal now. Let's be women and let's let men be men. Instead, it's like this constant fighting. And I sometimes think, are we just addicted to the adrenaline rush of fighting, or do we even know what we're fighting for,
Right.
anymore these days? And it's interesting because a lot of the time there's stuff that comes out that's meant to be empowering towards women. I'm like, if you actually wanted to empower women, you're not doing it. You're telling us that we need to be more like men and less like ourselves in order to be enough in society. And even just recently, I was writing an article and the publication came back to me saying, it sounds like this article isn't empowering women. We need to empower women. And the article was actually about how men and women have different hormonal profiles and how when you
Mm.
tap into that, you will empower yourself as a woman. And I literally was just thinking, this is the issue, right? Where people these days, they're not even allowing our differences to be powerful and to be
Right.
enough.
Right. And it goes back to where we've diversity of thought and diversity of background. They're saying it's bad now, right? Like to be a
Mm.
woman, to be a man, that's no longer acceptable. I recently shared a quote on Instagram and Facebook that went viral, and I'll read that here. Feminism is the idea that women are free when they are to serve their employers, but slaves when they serve their husband and children. And it led to a knockdown, drag out fight in the comment section, which I generally don't take part in. I just pop popcorn, sit back and watch it play out. But it's really interesting. This one woman made a comment, and that one comment led to 147 people basically uh, arguing with her. But she said, no, it's not meant for that. It's those women have born rights to decide their own life and live how they feel, guided or not, or guided or not, men should not be telling them what to do. And she said, women are not slaves for men. We are free beings with our own personal journeys. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that quote and why so many women felt passionately that serving or servitude is such a negative thing.
I think it comes down to this phrase that I've kind of termed empoweredly submissive. And for a lot
Mm.
of women, they experience this idea where if you are to do anything for a man, you are being submissive in a bad way. And we've
Mm.
lost the idea that, a powerful feminine woman, she knows when to say no. If she really doesn't want to do something for a man, I would hope that she says so. And that's her personal responsibility to say no, right? And it's great that we now live in a world where women can actually remove themselves from those situations, but that's up to them. And I think we still live in a day and age where women, they play this weird card sometimes of, I'm a victim, but I'm also the most powerful being on the earth. And like, I'm going to kind of exploit the power that I've been given. And so they'll play the victim card of like, I'm not your slave, when in reality, a woman that is nurturing, whether it's her husband, whether it's her kids, that's her act of femininity. And unfortunately, in today's society, we've really devalued the role of the feminine, right? So I deal with a lot of women and men that experience in the household this feeling where they feel like they're not bringing as much value to the family for doing the laundry or making dinner. And it's more
Right.
valuable to bring money home. And it's not to say that one is better than the other, because in my relationship, I'm the breadwinner currently. But it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's to say, if we as a society don't realize that the value that a woman provides in the home is just as, if not more valuable than the money that her husband brings in, we're going to continue to have all of these women that are miserable inside because they
Right.
are going out and achieving, not because they want to, but because they think that's the right thing to do in order to make them
Right.
enough in the eyes of society. And this kind of then comes into the whole, hashtag girl boss and Miss Independent. And I'm really passionate about this because I fell prey to this ideology, if you'll call it, of I'll be a better woman and I'm going to be enough and I'm going to be, I will have achieved if I am making a certain amount of money and doing a certain kind of job in the world, rather than actually sitting with myself and thinking about, does this make me happy? So I don't believe that like a woman has to be at home or has to be doing anything. The point where I come in is, what do you actually want to do? Because a lot of women, working jobs and they're doing these things for external validation. We've been kind of fed this lie that if we're externally achieving, we're then a feminist. And if we're not externally achieving, you're now traditional and not a feminist. When in reality, I think that feminism has really divorced women from their femininity, and it's kind of made us as women feel like we have to be more like men in order to be a quote unquote feminist,
Absolutely.
right? It's this like very certain image of a feminist. And, to your point of the Instagram comments, it's really heartbreaking how many women will rip down another woman that is living her own life, looking after her children. She's doing her gardening or whatever it is. And she's showing other women the possibilities that exist and what she finds empowering. And then you have these other women that come in that are probably self-proclaimed feminists. They
Right.
come in and they rip this woman down because she's doing something different. And so much of the time, and I've had these situations before where on my Instagram, I'll be like, I'm not a feminist. And who comes in and starts, abusing me in the comments? It's not women that are happy. It's women that are quote unquote feminists that probably are in a shitty relationship. They're bitter because men don't lead them. And deep down they want to be led, but it feels wrong to even want that. And so when I think about feminism these days, I think that it's gotten to a point where it's so multi-layered. It's not simple anymore. It's so, you know, it depends on the context of the situation, how somebody is perceiving it, what their history is like with their relationship with men and how they were raised as a woman. It's so multi-layered. It's not simple anymore. But
Right.
for me, one thing is very simple, and that is feminism these days has taken away women's connection to their femininity and
Right.
really just disconnected us from what truly makes us happy.
I am on the same page. And one woman made a comment and she basically said, serving her children is what a mother is in alignment with in from divine nature. Is basically that's what we were put on this planet to do. And so someone that finds happiness in doing so is merely in alignment. And and I thought that was really interesting. I myself am passionate about this because I was always the corporate junkie, working my way up the ladder in the banking industry for 20 years. And I
Mm.
thought I was happy, but there was always this churning where I just needed more. There was something missing. My marriage was a, excuse me, a pissing contest because we were both overworked. We hadn't slept enough. I was trying to earn as much as he was, and because I thought that was attractive. It was just this, it wasn't a healthy environment. And I
Mm.
didn't notice that until COVID. And I started having, because I wasn't having to commute every day, I was able to be home with the kids and be home with my husband when he was not working. And I was so happy. Everything realigned. And I realized I don't want to grind myself into paste anymore for someone else. I want to be here at home, but also doing my own thing. I'm an entrepreneur. So
Mhm.
I'm not 100% just with the kids and being a wife and mother, and that's totally fine for those that are. But I am happier now. Our marriage is better now than it's ever been, and it really I needed to wake up to it. So a lot of what you're talking about, I've personally experienced, and I used to carry myself with when someone would ask about me. Immediately, I'd talk about my title at work, right? And it's
Mm.
so funny now you have to retrain yourself when someone asks about you. You have to lead with so many other things because you don't have that default. And it actually feels really good. In your most recent episode on your podcast, I listened to that and you talk about softening into your submissive state. Can you break that down?
Mm.
I know you just touched on it, but can you break that down further for us?
Yeah. So, like I was kind of saying before, the word submissive gets a really bad rap, right? People often think if you're being submissive, it's like you're being walked all over, he's abusing you, etc. But the reality is that relationships require polarity. So even just with your situation that you were talking about with your husband, probably a big factor in your relationship blossoming after you kind of not working so hard and being in the grind was that you weren't in your hypermasculine and he wasn't in his hypermasculine butting heads, right? He got to be the masculine, you got to be more of the feminine. And like you said, it's not to say that you can't go and have a passion and a purpose outside of your family as a woman, but if you are in this hypermasculine state all the time, it's not allowing there to be the amount of polarity possible in your relationship. So that sexual energy that allows the chemistry to be there and for you to want to rip each other's clothes off, what's required is polarity. Now, if you are wanting to be in a relationship with a man that leads you, that has assertiveness, that is like, I'm taking you out 8 p.m. Friday, wear one of these 3 dresses or picks the dress for you or whatever, turns you on. It allows a woman
Yeah.
to just be like, I don't have to make a decision. And we all
Right.
know, because one of the most common complaints I hear from women is, and anyone listening is probably going to relate to this, I don't want to choose the date. When you go out on a first date with a guy and he's like, where do you want to go? It's immediately like, I'm turned off now, right? It's that immediate feeling of how hard is it for you to pick the place? And what happens is over time, when he's not leading, you slowly build resentment and you lose trust. And you then have to go into your hypermasculine because somebody has to be in control. So when you allow yourself to soften into your submissiveness, it allows him to be more of the man. So the polarity is then better. And you, as a result, get to feel that relaxed feeling that feels so good as a woman when you don't have to make the decision, when you don't have to lead, when you don't have to protect, when you don't have to provide. And so when we think about softening into submissiveness, it's not to say that you can't say no. It's not to say that you can't have input on the decision being made. What's really required for a woman to be truly submissive is actually confidence, right? Because submissiveness
Yes.
is different to being a doormat. Right. So if you are
Yes.
choosing consciously to be the submissive one in the relationship, that is only able to be done and felt when there is confidence in yourself to be able to say no, and confidence to be able to say, actually, I would really like to go here for dinner. Can we go here instead? Rather than being like, okay, whatever you say. And then you hating him
Right.
that whole night because you wanted to go somewhere else. But whose fault is it? It wasn't him. And these days we see that women are so quick to blame, and you see it in the Instagram comments, he's a narcissist, he's this, he's that. And maybe he was, but also people are factors of their environment. So if you as a woman are emasculating him, berating him, beating him down and shaming him, how can you expect him to feel safe to get to know you, right? To lead you,
Right.
to open up deep conversations. So much of the time we think about women wanting to be safe in a relationship. We forget to think about, what does a man want? And a masculine man wants to feel like he is the leader in the relationship. So when you soften, you get more out of the relationship, and then he gets to be the leader. So it's really a win-win, both in terms of just the everyday nuances of the relationship and also in the bedroom.
Yes, and one of the sexiest things is, it's funny. I like to say my sister and I both married men on. I like to say that they're on the asshole spectrum, and I say that just because my mom loves that, but it's because we respect a man that puts his foot down. Both of us are a lot to handle, and we both find it very attractive that our husbands. Ultimately, it's a 51-49 relationship.
Mm.
Ultimately, and it's we absolutely have that mutual respect, but they don't take crap. And I really like that. And there's so
And
many women that don't appreciate that.
And you know why this is, Kristen? I like to say that boundaries are aphrodisiacs. People like people that can say no. It actually builds more trust and safety in a relationship, because there's nothing worse than thinking, did he actually mean yes? Like, is he actually happy with that? Or is this
Right.
going to turn around and bite me in the bum in 3 weeks' time in a fight? You want someone, he wants a woman that can say no, and you want a man that can say no, because, not only does that
Yes.
create the respect, it creates safety in the relationship. And when it comes to a man that can put his foot down and basically keep you in line, why it's so hot and attractive to a woman that knows how to express herself is that we feel like we can be our full, crazy, emotional, feminine selves, right? And the feminine is just like that wild thunderstorm, and he's the sturdy tree that doesn't fall over. We want to be able to feel
Right.
like we can wild thunderstorm. We're different every week because of our cycles. We want to feel like he can handle that. And if he doesn't
Yes.
have the ability to keep you in line, what happens is you feel like you have to control yourself. You feel like you have to watch
Mm.
out for yourself because it's like, oh, will I say the wrong thing or be too much or not be appropriate in this particular scenario? But when you have a man that can keep you in line, he then is able to protect you mentally, physically, and emotionally of like, okay, honey, so we're going to this situation. You know how sometimes you like just start saying all these random things? Don't say that tonight to these people because it's not the right environment.
Yes,
But it
yes,
allows us to feel like, oh, great, we don't have to be the one on the lookout all the time. And that's just one really simple example, but it
yes.
actually creates safety because it allows her in the relationship to feel that she can be as emotional as she needs to be, and he will have that sturdy tree energy and not go anywhere. But when a woman feels like she's too much, it brings up that abandonment wound, which makes you
Right.
feel continuously insecure in the relationship. And then you hide parts of yourself as a woman, which a lot of women do. So, just on that note, boundaries are
Yes.
aphrodisiacs.
Yes. It's so funny. I realized how much I was just nodding my head because I'm like, yes, yes, as you're talking. I had to stop myself there. Amazing information and so many aha moments happening there. I wanted to share this. This is back in my single days, but one of the coolest dates I ever went on was with a Chinese American guy, brought me to a traditional Chinese restaurant where I didn't know what was on the menu. He ordered for me and
Mm.
served me once it came, and that was the coolest experience. It he turns out he was bringing me there at a time he knew his ex-girlfriend was going to be there to make her jealous. So clearly it didn't go past the first date, but still a really cool experience. I absolutely loved that display of masculinity. And still I don't look back on that date as a negative thing. I thought that was awesome that he was in control, and I allowed that and I enjoyed it. So I think, to your point, that's half the battle, is to realize this is okay. It's okay to not have to be in control of every aspect of your life. It's actually fun to just be like, just tell me what to do once in a while, right? Like, just tell me what you want. Tell me what you want to do.
Oh, amen.
Um,
I would not want to be a man. I'm like, you have to make all the decisions. I just get to be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it is fun, and it's been a process for me to be able to understand that this is okay. This does not mean you're downgrading yourself by opening yourself up that way. And a
Mhm.
very, very powerful thing that you are speaking out on. I want to talk about, a big thing has been the Barbie movie, and I have not gone and seen it, but I almost took my daughter's turning 13 here in a few weeks. I almost took her to see it. She loved Barbie, and I was told, do not. It's an absolute horrid message for youth. It's anti man, anti family. Can you help us understand the different aspects of Barbie and why it was so toxic, especially for the impressionable younger women?
Yeah, of course. And that's the real main kicker of like, I get that an adult can walk into a cinema and kind of blow off the satire and can brush past
Right.
it. But the reality is that you are making a Barbie movie that young girls are 100% going to go to, and any woman that just wants a fun chick flick is going to go to, right? So I went with my poor fiance. He took me on a date, and we sat through the thing, and I'm thinking, because the marketing was incredible, I'm thinking, yes, finally there's a great chick flick in the cinema. The first scene was young girls bashing their bitty babies when they saw Barbie come in. I didn't even understand the first scene, and then kind of as it went on, it really just had this message of, it's not safe to be a woman. We saw scenes, for example, on Venice Beach when they left Barbie Land and you got Ken and Barbie skating. And whilst I can't remember the exact words that they used, because obviously it's not out to watch at home again, it was along the lines of men and women were looking at Barbie and Ken as they would. They're in fluorescent outfits, looking a bit weird on Venice Beach. And, Barbie says something along the lines of, I feel like these gazes are predatory, or like, I don't feel safe. It was kind of along those lines. And, it feels like these people are looking at me for the wrong reasons. And Ken basically goes along to say like, oh, I love it. And essentially what it was saying in the message, and it was so blatantly obvious, is that women are not safe and men are oblivious to that fact. And
Mm.
number one, why that is an issue with that scene, for example, is because we are completely forgetting the fact that there is a biological component to women will never feel as safe as men. And when we are going on this parade all the time in society of like trying to make women feel as safe as men, I'm like, we're fighting an uphill battle because we inherently know that our bodies are not as big as men. We cannot
Right.
fight off a 6'5" guy if he came and attacked us. And so what it's doing then is it's, exacerbating this feeling a lot of women already are slammed with in the media of it's unsafe to be a woman. That is
Mm.
the most disempowering thing that I can imagine. And this kind of goes with what I was saying before, Kristen, of a lot of the messaging that's put out there. People think it's empowering towards women, but if you understand what's behind it, I'm like, you're telling girls that it's not safe to be a girl, right? That it's
Right.
not safe to be a woman and to be wearing a fun outfit on Venice Beach. The
Mm.
reality of something happening to Barbie and Ken or anybody skating along Venice Beach 11 a.m. on a weekend when there's a million people around you, it just is ludicrous to think that it's not a safe environment to be in. So
Right.
that was a really big one. The whole the whole movie, we kind of saw Barbie being in control. Barbie did everything. Every Barbie there is, has some kind of high flying job, lawyer, judge, astronaut. There's all these amazing, amazing Barbies. And then we come along and see the mother. Now, the mother Barbie,
Mm.
her name was like Midge or something or other. I can't remember the name. She's not called Barbie. The one Barbie that is not called Barbie is a mother. And apparently she's weird and creepy, according to what some of the characters were saying. And again, that's another message for all these girls of, oh, it's weird and creepy. And she was meant to have been discontinued, is what one of them said. I can't remember the exact character. That's not a good message to be putting out to young girls of it's creepy, weird, and you should be discontinued if you
Oh,
are a pregnant woman, right? And she
wow.
was the
That
odd
is
one out,
profound. Wow.
you know?
And she was by
So that
herself, right? If that's what I read, she was
yeah.
like a loner by herself. No one wanted to
Yeah,
hang
she
out
was
with
she
her.
was behind the picket fence. She wasn't involved in anything. She was behind the
Wow.
picket fence, like waving, and everyone thought she was weird. So that was another big scene where I was like, "That's a
Yeah.
big issue." And I mean, there were a million scenes in this. And then the real kicker, you would have thought maybe towards the end when there was this fight in Barbie Land, there was like a war where men were trying to get the power back and like bring the patriarchy in and whatnot. Which again, I'm
Mhm.
like, people just sometimes don't critically think about these things because if we don't
Right.
have some kind of a patriarchy in society, we're going to have no order and we're going to be in a very
Right.
chaotic world. Anyway, so they position patriarchy once again as this really, really bad thing of men want all the power and men are going to, brainwash all the women. So all the Kens were quote unquote brainwashing all the Barbies to what we said before, be submissive. The Barbies were,
Mhm.
in their words, enjoying giving their man tea and making him dinner and like, wearing nice outfits for him. And of course, we then find out they had been brainwashed by the patriarchy and like by all the Kens. And then the way that the Barbies got their power back, so they had 100% power again, wasn't some like, okay-ish message. It was, let's manipulate the Kens. So the way they got their
Mm.
power back was to start a war and then essentially manipulate the Kens so that they were fighting. They could go back to court, change the constitution or whatever they called it in Barbie Land so that the Barbies had 100% of the power again. So that to me was
Wow.
all a massive issue. The one thing that I could get around and I was like, okay, this is a good message, but most young girls would not have picked this up because you really had to be watching to see this,
Yeah.
is Ken and Barbie didn't end up together. One, what was a shame was I feel like the movie was a big catfish. You walk in there as a young girl, and even as me, I walked in there as a woman thinking I'm just going to get to watch a fun show and just kind of disconnect
Yeah.
from the realities of today. But really, the whole movie, you're just slammed with a more extreme perspective of what we're seeing in reality. And the reason why we go to movies is to escape and to see art and just have a little bit of fun. And
Exactly.
so, the Barbie movie did not follow the normal Barbie line at all. So Ken and Barbie weren't together in the end. Barbie didn't want to be with Ken. And the one positive that I could see was that Barbie didn't end up with Ken just because she should. Right now, most young girls are not going to pick that up. I think that's a positive. That's
Right.
one positive message of don't be with a man just because you quote unquote should be with a man. You need to obviously love
Right.
him and want to be with him. But
Right.
that was the tiniest bit out of the whole movie. And there was just thing after thing. The amount of times I just looked at my fiance and my jaw dropped just because there
Yeah,
was,
I can
I mean, I had
imagine.
really even touched the surface. It was an intense and really it was kind of devastating to watch because it was just like, oh, here's another movie or another TV show where our realities are just being blown out of proportion
Right.
into this kind of woke thing that we should be looking at, when people don't want to watch that. We want to go to the movies and
Yeah.
just watch a fun Barbie movie.
Exactly. It gets really old time after time, all these woke movies coming out. And it is sad that I even saw a scene where they're saying, "Do you want to beach me off? I bet I could beat you off." Like, I'm like, come on, I know what you guys are saying. So they sexualized a movie also.
Mm.
So that was disappointing to see. I want to talk about something else you went over in your most recent episode on your podcast. And you talked about how anger has gotten a bad rap and how really inherently we need to have a little bit of anger. It's a survival instinct. But can you break that down for us and why anger isn't always necessarily a negative thing?
Yeah. So, and this goes for men and for women. And I'm really passionate about helping men also access their anger, because they naturally, with their testosterone levels, are going to have more aggressiveness. And there's nothing wrong with that. And anger's got a bad rap because we think that if you're angry, that you are doing somebody harm. But the reality is there's like a healthy expression of anger and an unhealthy expression of anger. Now, if you're angry and you project that onto somebody else, that's not a healthy expression of anger. But what is healthy is for you to express your anger. If you don't express your anger, it's going somewhere, right? Often what happens is when you bottle up all that anger, it comes as a rage blackout. And we see this a lot in abusive relationships, especially around those times where there's the big sport competitions going on. And then, so and so's team doesn't win. And then the husbands kind of get really aggressive and angry. And often they won't remember that they were so angry last night and they punched their wife or whatever it is, because it's a rage. It's blackout rage. So their brain just shuts down. They don't remember it, but the anger is in their body, right? So it just kind of comes out because something's tipped them over the edge. So my take on it is that anger is a really important thing for you to feel and for you to express and for you to allow yourself to kind of tap into, and releasing it in a private, healthy manner, right? So that
Right.
you can actually get all of that tension and frustration out of your body. Because most of us are walking around with resentment, with anger, with
Mm,
bitterness, with
yeah.
tension. And of course, that comes out in unhealthy communication tactics. It comes out as manipulation. It comes out as physical issues. And so many people are sick these days, right?
Yeah.
So with anger, a lot of girls as well, when we are younger, we're taught to not be angry. And boys too, of don't be angry, don't be angry. And parents think they're doing the right things, of course, of telling their child to not be angry. They think that they're helping to regulate their child's emotions, but they're actually shutting down a very real emotion they're experiencing. Anger isn't good or bad. Anger just is neutral, right? You are the one adding the definition to it being good
Mm,
or bad. We often think that there are these good emotions, quote unquote, and these bad emotions. And when we do that, we don't allow ourselves to access the bad emotions that are really important for us to feel, because then they don't control us. But when we don't let ourselves feel those emotions when they come up or shortly after, then we just bottle them down and they come up in less than ideal situations. So really, as
right.
parents, and again, I know you kind of mentioned this before we even jumped on with the family systems, a lot of fathers are not involved in their child's life. And
Mm,
the issue that this comes out with for boys, especially, is they're not being raised by a man, they're being raised by
mm,
a woman. And
right.
women, they don't fully get boys because we have completely different brains, right? But, a young boy that's feeling anger, he needs his father or an uncle or someone to be like, right, let's go release this anger. And whether it's going punching a boxing bag in the garage, or whether it's chopping some wood, or whatever it is, when you can allow a child to release anger in a healthy way, that is helping them to emotionally regulate, because they
Yes.
learn, oh, I feel so much better after releasing this. And now I don't feel like I need to go snap at mum, or I don't need to go and be nasty to this kid at school, because they're not feeling all of this tension in their body anymore. So when it comes to anger, anger isn't good or bad. It's neutral. You're the one that's adding the definition, quote unquote, to anger. So allowing yourself to access it and feel it, it allows you to feel powerful, because you feel like you are in touch and in control of your emotions, because you're not shunning them, shaming them, or trying to keep them in the shadows.
Ah, that is powerful stuff right there. And it's funny, and I know we're at time here, so I'll wrap it up. But I was telling you before we started recording, I've always been attracted to someone with a little bit of a temper, I should say. And to me, it reflected like they care, they give a damn. I really like passion. And so to your
Mm,
point, you can rein that in and you can use it for positive. And there are ways. As a boy mom, I definitely I see the difference having a daughter and having a son, and I raise him
mm.
very differently than I've raised my daughter. So I think
I
that's
love that.
great stuff you're sharing. Where can people find you?
Best place to go is my website, monicayateshealth.com. And then you'll be able to find the podcast, Instagram, the blog, all the different places there where you can find more content of mine.
More so now than ever. It's very powerful, and the world is in need of this knowledge. So I will be sharing this out. Thank you so much for coming on KSOK Uncensored. I really appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you next Thursday.